Welcome to Authors on Tour Live, a podcast for people who love to hear about books from the authors themselves.
Today we're speaking with Michelle Alstead, who is the author of the romance novel After Love Leaves. Michelle, thanks for taking a few minutes out of your day for us.
Thanks for having me.
So this is a book about first loves and second chances. Can you give us a quick summary of the story?
This is the story of Zoe and Brad. They met initially at a high school graduation party and then didn't see each other for many years later. And what ends up happening is they reconnect, fall in love, and have quite the passionate love affair.
Nice. And so from what I understand, this book was based on a true story. Is that right?
It actually was inspired in part by a true story, yeah.
So how did that story inspire you? Or tell me about, what the genesis of this book was.
Well, I went through a bad breakup, and I did what a lot of us do when we're upset. I talked about it to anyone who would listen. In the course of all of that talking, I ended up hearing about other people's breakups and divorces. Everyone I talked to had a sad story of their own. We commiserated and discussed what we learned. One of my friends was actually able to reconcile with the partner that had ghosted her for a substantial amount of time. That's a huge betrayal, and yet she was able to forgive and move forward. That prompted me to ask the question, if I had a second chance with my first love, would I take it? Under what circumstances could I forgive the unforgivable? And from those questions and that experience, this story was born.
So who is the target audience for this book?
I would say my target audience is women who understand that love is messy and complicated. There are no white knights in this story, no perfect people, just real human beings struggling to overcome their insecurities and find lasting love in the process. Some of the characters, you'll totally love them, and others you'll just want to shake your fist at.
Nice. Okay. There are so many romance novels out there. If you could kind of compare yours to another one, like if you like this, you'll love After Love Leaves. What book would you say that this is similar to?
I would say that if you liked Me Without You, then you would really enjoy After Love Leaves.
Okay. And so what about those stories do you think kind of compare positively to each other?
I think the fact that, there are women in both stories searching out their own identity and trying to find their own place in this world and really looking to get to what actually makes them happy. I think that that's a common factor between the two novels. So I think if you're in your 20s or your 30s and you're in the middle of a relationship and you're not sure if it's the right one or not, or maybe you're single and you just want to be taken out of, the concept of being lonely and not having much going on, it's a great distraction because you can relate to these characters and their experiences.
So now this is not your first book. You've previously written a couple of romance novels, but also a pair of books about a supernatural teenage girl, if I understand correctly. So how does After Love Leaves fit in with your other novels? After Love Leaves is meant to stand on its own, and there won't be a sequel. The character Brad, however, was introduced in Before It's Done, which is a sequel to After It's Over. All four of my adult novels take place in the same universe, so if you like one, hopefully you'll read the others and you'll see the stories of the different characters who cross over between novels. Nice. And so this is your fifth book, is that right? It's actually my sixth novel. Sixth. And when did you write your first one? Or when was the first one published? Let me ask it that way. 2013, and that was the young adult novels, the first young adult novel. And so it's a pretty good output for such a short period of time. What motivates you to keep writing? Well, my son is my motivation. He suffers from autism, and the last 2.5 years have really revolved around his treatment. And I've watched him suffer greatly through therapy where he had to push to control not just his body, but his actions. And yet through all of that, he's the most optimistic, happy, fun kid you could ever meet. And I feel that as a mom, I can't encourage him to fight for his dreams when I've given up on my own. So I just keep writing, I keep trying, and I hope someday, my son looks back and thinks of the example I set and it carries him forward. That's great. Since some of your books are inspired by true stories, do you think you would ever write about a character like your son? I've considered it. There's a character in After Love Leaves named Charlie, and at the end of the book, she's pregnant, and I've kind of toyed with the idea that in a follow-up novel that would just revolve around Charlie, that maybe this child turned out to have autism. But, there's always going to be the people that feel like maybe that stuff doesn't belong in romance novels. They feel like it belongs more in sort of a real-life genre. So it's hard, as an author, you want to tell a story, but it's finding that audience that understands the story. That's kind of the struggle. Yeah, absolutely. So now that After Love Leaves is out there for the world, what's next for you? Are you working on a new book?
I'm actually just trying to map out the next book in the Gifted series. So we ended the second book with Sarah being primed to take on the world and save it. And so really, hopefully by Halloween, I'll actually have the third book in that series done.
So best of luck with this book and everything else you're working on. Michelle Alstead, author of After Love Leaves. Thanks for speaking with me today.
Thanks for talking to me. I appreciate it.